Hey.
Hi, Miguel.
Hey.
What's up?
I'm actually filming a video right now.
Oh, what? Damn it, Sandy?
No, that's an ancient show. This is a different one.
Ooh, too many records? What's up? Too many records, Sam?
Do you want to share your thoughts on my video subject?
Yeah, sure.
We're talking about record flipping and the whole world around it, and how it's kind of a gray area, because it's not just completely a bad thing all the time, because a lot of people sell records. So what are your thoughts on record flippers?
Yo, if you gotta be a businessman, you gotta be a businessman, you know? Like, we live in a world where you can literally sell clean water, so I don't know why people will get mad about selling records.
Do you think it's weird that people get mad about selling records compared to other hobbies like sneakers or flipping houses?
Yeah, it's just jealousy. I think there's like a lot of jealousy in the record world where it's like, I have this so no one else can have it, and that's why it's that much money. Like, why don't we want everyone to have the best record that you think is like your favorite? You know, like when I have a favorite, I like put it in everyone's faces, and I like buy them a copy of that book so they can have it. I just don't know why that doesn't translate into like the record world. But I also understand like collector's items. Like, I'm not dumb, but collector's items also mean like there's less of it, so it's like being selfish.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that, and that's kind of what we're going to dive into in this video. But I'm going to share some specific thoughts about different aspects of what it means to flip records or sell records.
What happened on this video? I like your Tycho poster.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
It's actually a signed record.
Of course it is.
Did you watch the Room tour? Have you seen The Room?
No, I haven't.
Go watch it.
I don't really have a YouTube account. I'll watch it. I'm saying,
You
like,
don't have what are you, 90? You can watch videos on YouTube without an account.
I don't use the tube. I'll use it now just for you.
Okay, well, I gotta film this video, but let's talk soon.
Okay, bye, Nadia.
Bye. So as I promised you guys, these are my thoughts on record flippers, and it's not a black and white issue. It's not record flippers bad, buyers good. It's a more complex issue than that. And I will say at the start of this video, I do not condone flipping in the way that like ticket scalpers buy up a whole bunch of tickets and resell them immediately for 5 times the price. I'll get into that. That is not okay in my book, but selling a record for what it's worth, I think that's totally fine. So let's kind of dive into what I believe these issues are, and maybe you guys can share your thoughts as well in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the channel or left a like on this video, I'd really appreciate it if you help me out. Just click the little button and let's continue. Now, before we really dive into this, I want to open this conversation to everyone. So if you have a thought as you're watching this video, pause and leave a comment. I definitely will read it, and I hopefully will have a response to it. I'd love for us to be able to come up with a solution together, and I think the only way we're going to figure out something is by working together. I wanted to do a video about this because I have seen this break into crazy, heated discussions on my Facebook group, as well as groups all around the vinyl community, where people get really up in arms about whatever they believe is right or moral when it comes to selling records. You can sit there and pretend like the value of your collection doesn't matter to you at all, but in my opinion, I think that's a little short-sighted. I feel like the hobby of collecting vinyl is one of the only hobbies where selling records is simultaneously extremely prevalent and looked down upon. Yes, it's true. Vinyl is for playing. Houses are for living in. Stamps are for mailing letters. But ultimately, it's worth knowing the value of your investment. I mean, come on, Discogs has a value estimate for that very reason. I know a lot of collectors that like to pretend like the ludicrous amount of money that they spend on their collection doesn't matter to them when it comes to figuring out the value of their collection. And I think that's just a fallacy. I really can't think of any other hobby that has so many people pretending like the value has no influence in buying, selling, or keeping something. I think that there are 3 groups of people that are at fault for this whole flipper culture. The first being the buyer for paying these crazy aftermarket prices. The second being the seller for gobbling up all the stock and selling them for outrageous prices. And the third being the labels, not providing enough supply for the demand and dropping things in this hypebeast culture way that encourages people to buy them and sell them for high prices because of a proven aftermarket business model. Also, when labels don't cancel orders that are very obviously to flip or by bots, either because they ordered a bunch of stuff really fast or just a ton of one limited record and don't set a limit for each record, that's only feeding the problem as well. I think that there's a very important distinction between selling a record and flipping a record. And I think that comes down to 2 things: intent and timing. I have obviously sold records before. I've sold records to some of you guys before. I threw TMR Fest where I sold a ton of records to you guys. I have nothing against selling records. That's how a lot of people fund their collections. It's how I've been able to continue to build my collection when I no longer want to listen to a record, or I realize the value of that record has shot up over the years and I think I would rather sell that to buy a different grail that I'm looking for. I think that's totally fine and just a byproduct of the hobby. What I don't do is buy 10 copies of a record and go on eBay and put them up for sale knowing that they'll make money once it sells out. That to me is crossing a line. There's nothing wrong with selling a record at market price once the price reaches that through a natural ebb and flow of kind of how things go between waiting for represses or after something sells out and people missing out and wanting it. Any hobby, sneakers, art, it happens everywhere. When things are of value, people will sell them for those values. The price that a record has in the aftermarket is justified by the going rate, which is the price someone is willing to pay for it on a semi-regular basis. There seems to be a weird moral hierarchy in the vinyl community where a lot of people think that they deserve to get a record at the face value it was sold at after it sells out. And I don't quite understand that, because that's not how any limited good works anywhere else. A lot of vinyl fans will sell pieces of their collection, but I have noticed a lot of people afraid to talk about it, lest they be named the next Rare Limiteds or Vinceron, or one of the big flipper names that everyone hates and demonizes. I think it's almost the equivalent of a scarlet letter in this community to be called a flipper, even when it's unjust. Again, the ethos of this video is there's nothing wrong with selling records, but there is something wrong with taking advantage of people like ticket scalpers. That's why I think this is a pretty gray area, and I fall somewhere in the middle of it. I don't condone flipping, but I also think it's fair to get the price for an item that it's valued at based on what people are willing to pay. No one would get mad at someone buying a house in 2005 and then in 2015 selling it for that current market value. I don't see any difference here. And the funny part is, if selling a record at a premium is a cardinal sin, then every record store on the planet is guilty, and that's a crazy statement. And one of the facets of this problem that I outlined is that we, the buyers, equally feed into this beast. I've used this analogy before, but it's worth saying again. If someone were to put up Abbey Road by the Beatles on eBay for $10,000, nobody would buy it, because that's a stupid price. But if someone did, that would set a scary precedent, because that would let future sellers of that album point to that and be like, see, it's sold there, so I can get that price too. That's an extreme example, but it happens with literally every single limited release. It'll sell out, people will throw it up for crazy prices, and then people are going to buy it, and that becomes the established price. It's because of that initial FOMO, or fear of missing out, that people feel the need to grab it because they're afraid it's going to only keep climbing in price, a la Blonde. And then if they don't buy it then, they're only going to pay more down the road. That inflated price becomes the aftermarket price. Now, I think that if a buyer were to hold off for 6 months after a record goes out of print, it would allow for two things. One, allowing a seller to get desperate and lower their price. And two, the possibility of a repress. The amount of times lately that I've seen a record go out of print and people scramble to pay 2-3 times the price, and then weeks later a repress is announced, it's crazy, and I feel like those people must feel bad. I feel terrible when it happens to me. I mean, let's be real. We all like to get new records, but nobody needs a record at a specific time. You can always, for the most part, listen to it digitally. You don't need it for that crazy price right away. It's just the worry that you'll never own it. I think pausing and letting the cycle play itself out a little more and not playing into the hands of the sellers will help the buyers in the long run. You know, hypebeast culture is everywhere these days. If you didn't see my video where I talk about crazy record prices, definitely click above. It's pretty wild if you're not familiar with what's going on, and especially the hip-hop world. But that being said, I wish I had an answer to this problem. I don't. And that's because I am part of the problem. I wish that I could say I'll step back and let the sellers kind of lower their price and not worry about missing out, but of course I do. I'm a collector just like you guys. However, as long as we the buyers keep doing this, the sellers are going to keep taking advantage. That's just how the cycle's going to perpetuate itself. So those are my thoughts, and I would love for you to tell me what your thoughts are on flipping culture and maybe what you think we can do to make it better. I don't want the high barrier of entry to get a record that's out of print to turn people away from this hobby. I think that's a dangerous slope to fall down because there are so many people that get into the hobby after a record's out of print and they never will be able to get it for a fair price, and that might make people not want to enjoy vinyl to begin with. So I think that there's a bigger picture to look at than sale to sale, more about the whole aftermarket as a whole. Because as much as I love being a collector, at the end of the day, we're all huge music fans, and that is more important than collecting anything. I love this hobby for the community, and I want it to be accessible for everyone in the community to be able to get the records they want to listen to. I don't know what the answer is, like I said, but maybe you guys can have a solution that I haven't thought of. So I'd love to hear your comments and hopefully talk through it with you guys, and maybe together we can figure out a way to curb this problem and all get the records we want for fair prices eventually. So look forward to chatting with you guys in the comments. Thanks for watching the video. More coming soon. Take it easy.